Good morning, folks. Grab yourself a cup of coffee. Let's talk about some astronomy. All right. Well, we have a very special, very beautiful show for you today. Topics are going to be including Pluto, because we are at the anniversary of the demotion of Pluto, as well as a strange dark spot that has appeared on Neptune. And we're going to be going over the Alien franchise, looking at that sort of famous LV 426 moon that they first discovered, the aliens, and seeing if there's a real world counterpart to that moon out there. So let's get started with Pluto, because last week was the anniversary of Pluto's demotion from being a planet. Well, you may be old enough to remember back when Pluto was considered a planet. Well, this was back when our technology was still evolving and we didn't really know the extent of what was out there. But with time, astronomers began to discover objects beyond Pluto, raising the question of what actually constitutes a planet. Now, this culminated in Pluto being downgraded from a planet to a dwarf planet on August 24th, 2006. Now, see, prior to 2006, astronomers never really got around to establishing clear standards for planets, and there was no minimum size or mass or other considerations. But then they began to discover objects like Haumea, Makemake, and Eris. And speaking of Eris, that object had actually more mass than Pluto. So this raised the question, what exactly is considered a planet? Well, they were in a bit of a pickle, so this led to the formation of something called the Planet Definition Committee, a committee I'm sure that is not around anymore. Now, while discussing the matter, a few possible roads came about for them to go down. One would be to make a decision by size and mass so that Pluto could remain a planet, thus also making Eris and Ceres is in the asteroid belt, to make these two also a planet as well. Now, another avenue they considered was not really using any logic at all. Instead, they would just say Pluto was a planet and Earth is a planet, but Eris wasn't a planet because, well, just because reasons. But then they decided they needed to come up with a formal scientific definition of what it means to be a planet. This resulted in Pluto getting the boot from major planet status. Now, as it goes, the definition now stands as follows of what is considered a planet. A planet is a celestial body that A, is in orbit around the sun, just check. Pluto is that. B, has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces so that it assumes a hydrostatic equilibrium state. Well, what does that mean? Basically, its orbit is roundish. So, Pluto, check. And C, has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. So, for Pluto, that is a no. Pluto has failed this last category. Pluto simply isn't the dominant object in its orbit. It must either sling other objects away or merge with them, and it doesn't do that. So Pluto is only about 0.07 times the mass of the objects in its orbit. On the other hand, Earth is 1.7 million times the mass of the objects in its orbit. Now, on that day, Pluto was not only demoted, but a new category of celestial objects like Pluto and other Pluto-like objects was created. This was a dwarf planet. So a dwarf planet is a celestial body that A, is in orbit around the sun, B, has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces so that it assumes a hydrostatic equilibrium, which is nearly round in shape, C, has not cleared the neighborhood around its orbit, and D, is not a satellite. So that was around 17 years ago. This month, Pluto got the boot from the solar system as a planet. It still orbits around the sun like all the other planets do, but they're all laughing at Pluto. But Pluto is still kind of cool, I guess. Especially now that we have that cool picture of it with its little heart on there. Now, as a side note, I actually started it in the planetarium in 2006. At the time, we had a lot of shows that considered Pluto a planet. In fact, we had that My Very Educated Mother Just Served Us 9 Pieces. We had to change that to My Very Educated Mother Just Served Us Nectarines or Nachos, because the 9 planets means Neptune and Pluto. So since Pluto is out of there, we now have to change the mnemonic to something else. We also had to change a lot of the shows, like Secrets of the Cardboard Rocket, which talked about Pluto being one of the planets in the solar system. But we had to change that and also make little disclaimers. But now everything's changed. Everything reflects the way that we now consider the planets and Pluto as well. Well, speaking of 9 planets and 8 planets in Neptune and Pluto, Neptune has recently been observed from Earth as having this dark spot on its surface. Looks kind of like a bruise in a way. What is this dark spot on Pluto? Well, recently, the European Southern Observatory, or ESO, observed this dark spot on Neptune. Now, this isn't the first time that we have seen a dark spot on Neptune, but it is the first time we have seen it from Earth. Now, large dark spots are common features on gas giant planets like Neptune. In fact, the Great Red Spot of Jupiter is one such example. But a dark spot on Neptune was first observed by NASA's Voyager 2 spacecraft in 1989 to only disappear a few years later. Now, since then, astronomers have wondered what exactly these dark spots are. Now, some speculate that such dark spots on Neptune are the result of a clearing out process in the clouds, but new observations indicate that these dark areas are possibly due to air particles darkening a layer below the main visible haze layer as ice and haze mix in the atmosphere. Now, what is very interesting about this is how they came up with this answer or this conclusion. It wasn't easy. Now, using the VLT, which is the Very Large Telescope, that's actually the name of it, the VLT Multi-Unit Spectroscopic Explorer, or MUSE, the researchers were able to split reflected sunlight from Neptune and its spot into component colors or wavelengths. And they were able to obtain a 3D spectrum. Now, this meant they could study the spot in more detail than was possible before. Now, since different wavelengths probe different depths in Neptune's atmosphere, having a spectrum enabled astronomers to better determine the height at which the dark spot sits in the planet's atmosphere. Now, the spectrum also provided information on the chemical composition of the different layers of the atmosphere, which gave the team clues as to why the spot appeared to be dark. So it's pretty cool that we are able to do that, and astronomers are able to examine phenomena like this from Earth and determine what the cause is. So more ways of looking at things in the solar system and beyond than just by visible light. Well, that brings me to Alien and aliens. I wanted to talk a little bit more about movies. I like movies, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the Alien franchise and LV-426, that little moon around that planet. Now, in the Alien movie franchise, you may remember something called Acheron, or LV-426. This is the moon that was orbiting the planet Campamos. Now, this is located in the Zeta II Reticuli system. That's one of the 3 moons orbiting this ringed gas giant in the fictional world of Alien. It's also where they first came across this derelict spaceship, and this contained that large engineer, and also that egg farm containing those face-hugger alien beings. Well, so I wanted to see if LV-426 was actually out there, or if the location was actually out there. How much of it was real? How much of this is fiction? So, question is this science fiction, or is anything based on real life? Well, the star system, Zeta Reticuli, actually does exist, and it can be found in the constellation Reticulum. Now, true to the Alien movie, it is a double star system containing 2 stars that are very much like our own sun, i.e. 2 yellow dwarf stars. Now, this is about 39 light years away from us, and it is what is called a wide binary star system. Now, however, that is about where the real life stuff ends. So its location is actually real, but that's about all. So we don't really know if this system has any exoplanets, much less if the exoplanets have any moons. But it was believed that it had a debris field, but that's also up for debate. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because it is supposed to have this debris field, and they were looking at it and appeared to be in the process of being shaped by a large Jupiter-like object. So you never know, maybe, because in the movie, the planet Kalpamos was a sort of like a large Saturn-shaped or Saturn-sized object, and it had those moons around it, and that was where they had the distress signal called out to them. Well, that's about it, folks, for this week's Astronomy and Coffee. I want to bring up one more time that we have a new show coming up September 9th and September 16th called Beautifica. Now, if you are aware, if you are familiar with, if you have seen our past show of Mesmerica from James Hood, then you will dig, you will be into Beautifica. It is a fully immersive 360-degree full dome show. It is an immersive experience. You can't find it anywhere else in Louisiana, but you can come here and check it out at the Louisiana Art and Science Museum when it plays September 9th and September 16th. We do have more shows coming up, but you can visit this location right down here. Yes, right there. Visit that website right there, and then you can get your own tickets and come see the show and say hi to me as well. Well, I will see you next week for another episode of Astronomy and Coffee. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll be seeing you soon. Have a good one.